law of Ef Hutton, what happens is when you work with people, all right, what you can do is you're looking for the influencers. All right, you guys remember Claude, right, when he talks about the story about Benny and Claude. Claude was the influencer. Do you guys see that? And Benny would always look at him because he was the influencer. So when you're working with a group of people and you ask a question, if everybody looks at them, that means that that person is a leader. How do you judge it is by watching the eyes. Are you guys with me on this? So you watch the eyes. Now, why do you want to watch the eyes? Because the eyes are going to give you an idea of who's the influencer. So if you're talking to someone, there was a game show back in the days. A lot of you probably remember. It was basically about people, and they would ask. It would be like 5 contestants, and on this game show, okay, what would happen is someone would say, "Hey, my name is Tim Herr. My name is Tim Herr. My name is Tim Herr," and they had to find out who was telling the truth. Do you see that? And it was easy if you look back at the game, if you watch it again, the film, like because they don't make that show anymore. But if you look back and watch it, you're right. Whenever the person that was the real person would always talk, guess what would happen? Everybody always look at him. So you guys got to realize that's how you can tell. Guess what? Who the real influencers are, is by who people are looking at. Does that make sense to you guys? So I want to dive into this law of Ef Hutton, okay? Now, why do they call it the Ef Hutton? Back in the days, it's really old school. But the Ef Hutton, what would happen is there would be an Ef Hutton commercial. Ef Hutton is a company, and in the commercial there would be basically a restaurant full of people and everybody would be talking, and then they would zone in on a conversation. And the person would talk about, you know what I mean, their insurance and how they had Ef Hutton. And as soon as he would say Ef Hutton, everybody would, oh. And that was the reason why, because what they're saying is basically, Ef Hutton, whenever people would say that word Ef Hutton, people would just stop, and didn't really happen in real life. It was just the commercial. Do you guys get that? It's not like, you know what I mean, everybody's talking, someone says Ef Hutton, everyone just freaks out. But in the commercial, that's what would go down. So why he calls the law of Ef Hutton, is basically what it means is that's the person that people listen to. So when you say Ef Hutton, people would stop and they would learn. So I'm going to dive into this real quickly. So for your notes, obviously the first thing is this: when the real leader speaks, people listen. Okay, and what that means is this: is when you work with a group of people and you work with a team of people, you can find out very quickly. Guess what? Who the influencers are. How do you know who the influencers are? It's very obvious, right? You watch it, who people look at. And whenever they talk, people really listen. So as you recognize, as your leadership grows, obviously you're going to recognize that you influence your team. Okay, you influence your organization. That's why your people are always watching what you do. I always tell people, like, as a leader, you actually, you live in a fishbowl. You live in a fishbowl. What does that mean? Every move that you make, people are watching you. Every move that you make, people are watching you. So you want to make sure that, guess what? You make the right choices. That's why you can influence your organization to step up simply by stepping up. We're going to talk more about it during the law of magnetism, but you'll find out that your people are going to do what you do, not what you say. So if you want your people in the front row taking notes, all you got to do is, guess what? Take notes. If you're in the front row taking notes and your people see that, guess what happens? They do the same thing, right? There was a company that the first company I ever worked with Julian in. We weren't in the organization together, but he was my sideline. And he could tell you what I would always do is when we would go to the conventions, and I had 500 people, 600 people, 1,000 people at these conventions. And I would always everyone would be like in a stadium, and the seating would be down, okay? Meaning that it's kind of like a stadium type seating, right? Like you guys go to the movie theaters, you can see the people in front of you, but you know what I'm saying? So it goes down like this. And what I would always do it would be a 2-day convention, is I would grab my journal, just like this, and guess what I'd do? I would stand in front and take notes like a crazy person. And I would be like this, standing. And my people would see me the whole time, so guess what happened? They do the same thing. So what would happen is, guess what? My group would get a lot more out of it than everybody else's group. Do you guys see that? And that's how I dominated that company. We ended up becoming the #1 producers in that company, was because I led by example. So other people are there and they're not with their leaders. Does that make sense? But I was there in the front row taking notes with everybody. Does that make sense to you guys? So guess what? Do the right thing because your people are watching you. all the time. Very similar to the law of influence. Okay, here, this is very powerful. I think a lot of you will like this one. All right, this is right here, the law of Ef Hutton. Okay, right here. There's two types of leaders. You have position leaders. Okay, position leaders. What are they? Those are the people saying, "Hey, I'm the leader. I'm the leader. I'm the leader. I'm the leader." Those are the type of people that when you watch them, you can see that, guess what? They're not the real leader. So you have position leaders. Okay, position leaders. Guess what they do? They speak first. So what he's talking about is when you get in a little board meeting. I know a lot of you guys probably haven't been to a lot of board meetings, lately, but when you go to like board meetings or you get around a small conference room and it's an open forum discussion, what happens is always the people that have the title, that think that they're the leader, will start jabbing their mouth all the time because they're what we call positional leaders. Some people, that's the whole thing. I say, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a this, I'm a that. But at the end of the day, guess what? If you don't influence anybody, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter because the real leaders are the influencers. So position leaders, guess what? They speak what? First. Now the real leaders speak later. Does that make sense? Why? Because they're reading and responding. They're trying to find out what's going on. You'll find out what read and respond means here in a little bit. Okay, when we talk about that law, okay, of intuition, but you're looking at the situation. You're trying to read the situation, find out what's going on, because you could learn more by observing. Does that make sense? So guess what? The real leaders speak later. Okay, and when the real leader speaks, people what? Listen. Okay, good. Number two, okay, positional leaders need the influence of the real leaders to get things done. As you remember back whenever John C. Maxwell talked about his first church last week in Hillham, Indiana, before he would go up, okay, to his board meetings, he would go visit who? Claude on the what? On the farm. Okay, 4 people remember. He would go to the farm, and what would he talk to Claude about? Yeah, we talk about what needs to be done, right, at the church, what needs to happen, what needs to happen, what needs to happen. So he would go there and he would spend time with them. And when he would spend time with them, guess what he would do? He would talk to them about what needs to be done. Why? Because Claude was the real what? Influence and influencer, which is basically another word for leader. So basically, what happens is positional leaders, they need the influence of the real leader to get things done. Okay, and obviously, who is the pastor of that church? John Maxwell. So who was the position leader? John Maxwell. Does that make sense? Now who had the influence? Claude. Do you guys see that? So you want to realize, guess what? The positional leader, okay, they need the influence of the real leader to get things done. Now positional leaders, guess what? They only influence other positional leaders. They only influence other what? Position leaders. So what you want to realize is, guess what? Real leaders, they speak later. Okay, for your notes. They need only their influence to get things done. They have the influence. So they don't have to go out there and try to get someone else's influence to get what they need done. And then obviously the real leaders, okay, they influence everyone in the room. They influence everyone in the room. So how do you know? How do you know if you're a real leader or not? Or a position leader or a real leader or not? You know, you want to look at it and say, okay, look, guess what? I need to work on my leadership. Today we're going to talk about how to do that, okay? So obviously, has everybody got this page? If you do, say aye. Aye. All right, good. We got that one already. Now, the next one I want to talk about is right here. Okay, this is Margaret Thatcher, okay? Margaret Thatcher says, being in power is like being a lady. Okay, if you have to tell people you are, you aren't. You know what I'm saying? You know, so what you want to realize is that, guess what? Margaret Thatcher says what? You know what I'm saying? It's just like power. If you have to tell people, guess what, that you're a leader, then you're not a leader. You guys see what I'm saying? You don't just tell people you're a leader, you just live your life, and guess what? You know what I'm saying? You know, you affect other people's lives and help them out. So does everybody got the law of Ef Hutton? You guys got this? Yes.